Hi guys, welcome to Lincoln's Inn Kitchen. I'm Joseph O'Neill, I'm a junior sous chef in the NCR restaurant and bar. Today we're going to take you through making some hot cross buns from the recipe from the Lincoln's Inn website. We'll go through all the equipment to get first, and then we're going to go through the ingredients you need to weigh out. So probably need one bowl. If you have a food processor at home, you can use that with a paddle attachment. If not, you can also use a bowl, but we'll kind of work with that when we're going through it. Need two little pans, one for warming some milk and one for warming some golden syrup. You need a baking tray, something similar to this. Anything will work as long as it's got a little bit of a lip, and then you can make more if you need to, using two, and some scales. And then we're going to start weighing everything out now. And so we're going to start by weighing out the ingredients. We're going to have 300 grams of milk. We're going to weigh that out, and we're going to add 7 grams of packet dried yeast. Probably a lot easier to find in the shops than the fresh yeast, but if you can find fresh yeast, we're just going to double the amount. Then we're going to get 1 egg, and we're going to mix it through with the yeast and the milk. That's to kind of warm up the yeast and get it alive again. So we're going to start by mixing the yeast in with the milk. I've already warmed the milk and added the yeast. We're going to add the egg now. That's about room temperature, so we're just going to leave that to sit for 5 minutes to wake the yeast back up. In the meantime, we can start by weighing out all the dried ingredients. So guys, while the milk is steeping there, we're going to add all our dry ingredients into the same bowl. So we've got 500 grams of flour. You can use cake flour or a soft bread flour. Whatever you can find in the shops, it will work quite well. And we've got our sugar we're going to add in the bowl as well. 75 grams, 10 grams of salt, 100 grams of raisins or sultanas. I'm going to use sultanas because I prefer them. And then you've got the spices, which is ginger, nutmeg and cinnamon. And then we're going to add that in as well. We're going to give it a little mix before so there's no sugar and salt that's going to attack the yeast and kill it off. You can also have your butter out softening in a warm place, and that same warm place is probably going to be good for us to prove our buns as well. So we've weighed out all the dry ingredients in the food processor, and our milk is ready to go in. So we're going to mix that now on about speed 2 for a few minutes until it comes together to a smooth dough. So we're going to bring that to a smooth dough in here for about 2 minutes, and then we're going to add the butter. Once that's worked in, we're going to take it out and work over on the, we're going to knead it together over on the bench. It will look like that when it's ready, guys, and then we're going to work it all together into a nice smooth ball on the bench. So we're going to lightly flour the bench over here, and then we're going to turn our dough out onto it and work it with our hands for about 5 minutes. make sure to get everything off the bowl, so we're not losing any portions of hot cross buns. So I like to fold it, pull it out on the sides, and then fold it back into the middle, and so give us a bit of a backbone to the dough, and it will also just make it a lot more smooth. If you need to add a little bit more flour, obviously just add it there, because it can be quite sticky sometimes. So it's an enriched dough with loads of butter, eggs and sugar in it, so really it's going to be quite sticky to work with, but it will come together eventually. You can add a tiny bit more flour if you need to, but try to resist adding too much. So we're almost ready now. Nice and smooth, and we're going to prove it for about half an hour until doubled in size. So now we're going to turn it into a lightly greased bowl. Some oil spray or some olive oil, just rub it into the bowl, will be fine. Your dough will get cold working on the bench, so we need to come back up temperatures. It might take a little bit longer than half an hour, but that should be about right. You'll see it double in size. So now we're going to rest this in a warm place. I've got a warming cupboard, so I'm going to leave it in there about 34 degrees, but on top of an oven or beside an oven will usually be fine. So the dough's been in the proofer for about half an hour, or the warm place. Also a closed oven would work well that's not on. We're going to turn it out now, shape it, and then pull it up and put it back in the proofer. You don't really need any flour for this one because you've worked the dough, so it should be quite elastic already. And depending on the size, they're going to be about 60, 70 grams, but if you want bigger ones, they could be 100 grams. That's all up to you. I did this, I might make them a bit bigger to nozzle. I'm going to go 80 grams, okay? Right. So we've weighed out the dough into 80 gram balls, we've got about 12 here. 85 grams is fine if it doesn't make too much of a difference in the actual bake. So we're going to start rolling them with our hands. I think it's quite similar to like a mouse shape. So like you'd hold a mouse on a computer, and just slowly work it into a circle motion, and you will get a circular end product. If they're a bit misshapen from when you've been weighing it out and cutting and changing, you can just roll it like this, pull all the outsides in and back into the middle, and that will help you get a circular shape to begin with, and then you can start again with the mouse shape movement. So I've lined my tray with some oil spray. You can buy the oil spray in most shops, and if not, you can just use butter. The flour shouldn't really be necessary, but if you do feel like they will stick, you can do it. So a small gap between all the buns when we're proving them up, they will prove together, and if you want a more tear and share option, this is better. If you want them to be separated, then you can just bake them on a slightly larger tray or get 2 trays and separate them a little bit more. So we're going to cling on these, stick them in the proof for about another half an hour, maybe 40 minutes, we'll see how we go on. So don't be worried if they don't prove up, they might just need to be somewhere a little bit warmer for a slightly longer time. Obviously with the industrial kitchen we have here, we have professional provers, so it will take a lot quicker time to do it, but really at home it can take a little bit longer, so you can factor that into your baking. So while the buns are in the proving cupboard or wherever you've got them, we're going to make the cross mixture. So there's just water and flour. It needs to just be in the right consistency that we can pipe it in. So if you do need a piping bag. If you don't have a piping bag, you can either use a squeezy bottle, if you have one of those. If you don't have one of those, probably just a sandwich bag, seal it, and then cut the hole out of the middle, out the bottom corner. You might need to add a touch more flour or a touch more water as you go. It just needs to be a pipeable consistency, so that is about right. Still a bit gloopy and still has a bit of gluten texture holding it together, so it'll be nice to pipe. So you can stick that in a piping bag now and reserve it for later, somewhere warm. After that we can start to get our golden syrup in a pan, and we can slowly warm that as well, either on the stove. If you don't want to warm it on the stove, you can stick it in a plastic container and warm it slowly in the microwave, but I'll warm it on the stove for this purpose. So now the buns that we've proved in the prover are about doubled in size. They've been in there for about 45 minutes roughly, about 40 degrees, so bear that in mind when you're proving if it takes a little bit slower. I'm going to crack these open now, we're going to pipe the cross on top. I do have a piping bag here, so it will be quite easy. If they're lined up nicer, then when you're piping the cross, you don't have to move in and out as much. It can just be one continuous line over the whole thing. Right, so these are ready to go in the oven now. They're going to go in the oven at 190 for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to turn it down to 180 for another 15 minutes. As I said in the recipe, if your oven's quite strong or you have a strong part of your oven at the top, just bear it in mind, you don't want them to burn. So we're going to just keep an eye on them and maybe turn the temperature down a bit earlier, or don't start it at 190, maybe start at 180 instead. So if we follow the recipe correctly all up to this point, the buns should just be ready to come out of the oven. And while they're in there, we'll just start warming up our golden syrup to glaze the buns. So it should be a nice glazing consistency at this point. If it's just warm, you can either do it in the microwave or on the stove. So we'll glaze them as they come out of the oven so they stay hot, and then you get a nice sticky bun effect when you're tearing them apart. So there they are out of the oven. Hopefully you can see quite nicely. So when we're glazing them, we're just going to glaze them with golden syrup and then a sprinkle of demerara sugar just so you get an extra crunch on top. The added sweetness. Now we're going to leave them to cool for about 15 minutes, and then they'll be nice and edible. You can leave them to cool for a further hour or so, and then you can cut them in half and toast them, and add your butter, or you can just enjoy the butter fresh out of the oven. So once they're cooled and glazed, we can take them out and put them on whatever serving tray we're going, cut them in half, and spread them generously with some butter. Preferably unsalted, and then a sprinkle of Morden salt on top as well, and enjoy.